Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew. As always, that's absolutely everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast is given away by its title. I'm here to talk of the stories of film, and I tend to talk about development stories, production stories, marketing stories, release stories, all the bits and bobs really that go to make the films that we know and sometimes love. Just that, the films that we know and sometimes love. What you've happened upon here, though, is one of my occasional special episodes of Film Stories where I bring in a filmmaker to talk about their work, and I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast director Dexter Fletcher. Now, Dexter Fletcher has directed the first two episodes of Paramount Plus's new biographical drama, The Offer, a 10-part television series that tells the story of the making of The Godfather. So that's primarily what you're going to hear in my conversation with Dexter. Just to give you some background, The Offer has been created by Michael Tolkien, who wrote the show, developed it with Nicky Toscano, and the cast includes Miles Teller as Albert S. Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather, through whose eyes they tell the story here. Matthew Good plays Robert Evans, Dan Fogler plays Francis Ford Coppola, Bern Gorman's in there as Charles Bloodhorn, and Juno Tempo as Betty McCart. Now, there's a whole bunch of real-life names in this. Al Pacino is played by Anthony Ippolito. Frank Sinatra is played by Frank John Hughes. Patrick Gallo is Mario Puzo. So we're going to drop a couple of those names into the conversation. Also, what I touch on is a couple of Dexter's other films as well. So just to go through the ones we talk about, I mentioned briefly Sunshine on Leith and the ending of that without spoiling the ending of it. I talk briefly about Eddie the Eagle, a terrific film I've covered before on the podcast, and then his experience going from Bohemian Rhapsody, where he was brought in late in production to replace director Bryan Singer on that, and then moving straight onto the film Rocketman, which came out in 2019, starred Taron Egerton. Dexter Fletcher is also now making his new film, which is called Ghosted, starring Ana de Armas and Chris Evans, so we touch on that as well. So there's quite a few little bits and bobs that we name drop throughout all of this, but I think it's a fairly easy to follow conversation, and he is, as always, a delight. Just to reiterate, The Offer is streaming on the Paramount Plus service, which is now available in the UK. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to play you a little clip from the promo of that, and then I'll come to my chat with Dexter the other side of this.
Listen here, Bob. Paramount is going to come crashing down. We need hits.
You've read The Godfather, right?
Godfather. Sure, who hasn't?
We've been all over town. No one wants to make this movie. So I need you to produce it. Get going.
I can't believe you told me you read it. You better read fast on the plane.
Oh yeah, that's big. The Godfather
Is bringing us too many problems.
You want me to take care of it?
Gangster movies are dead.
This is not just some gangster film. We need someone who understands Italians. For instance, Ford Coppola. He's got a great vision.
We have to put this in the picture.
A scene about gangsters arguing over sauce?
No. Scene about family arguing over sauce.
I got no cast.
Do you think Pacino is actually a possibility?
Cut it!
No Pacino.
Marlon Brando is interested.
He's a nutcase.
Can one thing go right with this picture?
That was a clip from The Offer, the new series that's on Paramount Plus here in the UK now. And I'm delighted to be joined by its executive producer and its director of the first two episodes and second-time guest on this podcast as well, Mr. Dexter Fletcher. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, Simon. How are you?
I am still alive, and
That's good.
I'm working to that base.
Good. Okay, well, we'll start there and work from there. That sounds encouraging.
So you've been on this podcast before. If you get on a third time, you're co-host. That's kind of the way it works. And
Okay.
it was, yeah,
Right.
and it was just as Rocketman was in the BAFTA mix. I think
Right.
I think we can all agree Taron Egerton was robbed. I don't know whether you're allowed to say that, but I'll go for that.
I'm not, but I appreciate you saying it.
Well, he wasn't he? But fair enough.
Well,
and you were heading off to a meeting with a big Hollywood producer who I won't name because you didn't say it on microphone straight after. And so this was the end of 2019. Rocketman had come out, had won a lot of acclaim, and deservedly so. I love that film. But I wonder, can you pick up the story of sort of what happened next? What was that year after Rocketman? Because presumably there's a path of projects that seem to lead to this one. Yeah. And this was like the third or fourth that was reported with your name attached.
That's true. I was a bit of a slut, wasn't I? I was all over the place, all over town. Well, look, Rocketman did it. It generated and garnered a lot of attention and all good and positive. And people loved the film and responded brilliantly to it. And so that was, of course, very exciting. And we got to travel around the world sort of promoting it and generally being adored, which is never painful, talking about our favourite subject, ourselves in the film. So that took up the best part of that beginning of that year. And that was 2019, I suppose, wasn't it? And then I started. I think I went and worked with Robert Downey for a while on Sherlock 3.
Yeah.
That summer, we were bashing out the script with a great writer friend of mine, Joe Pennell.
Okay.
Who did The Road and amongst other things. And then, so we were working on that for the best part of the year, and then that hit a bumper. That stopped. That started getting closer, and then there was something that delayed that, because it was sort of planned to be shooting by the end of the year, but then that got delayed and got pushed back, and then COVID hit.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, as other people might have heard of it. It was an annoying interruption in the entire human race. Continuing the way they were.
At one stage in the midst of that as well, if I believe the clickbait, you were doing Renfield, you were doing The Saint.
Well,
those were in there as well.
Renfield was part of the discussion as well. But that came later, actually, I think. That was something that was further down the line. And The Saint as well, So once Sherlock was sort of wound down for a bit and said, okay, let's circle the horses or whatever it is, or whatever you're doing, or think about what we're going to do next. Renfield and The Saint come up. So I was attached to both of those projects, and they were running simultaneously, and working on both of them with those various producers. And it got to a point where I had to make a firm and hard decision about which way I was going to go.
Yeah.
And I'd always had sort of like, aspirations to do an action film, and so I they were both very action orientated, but I'm not so much of a horror aficionado. Not that Renfield's a horror. Anyway, I flopped for when my feet were held to the fire. I flopped for The Saint. It was Simon Templar and it was old, and so that was good. And Chris Pine and I had a really good sit down and a great meeting, and Renfield had some, we were working out other kinks and stuff. But anyway, The Saint was more ready.
Yeah.
So I was like, great, let's do that. And then of course COVID was in, but there was a lot of writing of The Saint and various drafts back and forward, and that was all going. And then we got The Saint into pre-production, which was a huge achievement. It's huge.
Yeah.
Lorenzo de Bonaventura was producing. It was great, and it was at Paramount. And then a new regime came in at Paramount very suddenly. So all the people that I'd worked with, Rocketman, and who were in charge there then, they moved on, and someone else came in, and they said, I'm not sure this is The Saint we want to do. And so that changed everything as well with The Saint. So after, putting a hell of a lot of work into that and spending a lot of time developing that, again, it's the vagaries of the studio system, or just even filmmaking in general. Really, is that you get to a point where it doesn't matter how much work you put in, if some big cheese or some big wheel says no, this isn't ready, or we're not ready, or let's keep working, all of it can come to naught. So that's essentially what happened with The Saints. Someone came in and went, that was the old guard, this is the new, let's have a rethink about it. So that was a bit of a blow, because I'd been, putting a ton of work on that, and Chris Pine was very sanguine about it. He went off and did Dungeons and Dragons and was not at all fazed by that. And in fact, I went and did a day's work on that just for fun, with him and Mr. Rodriguez. And then while I was sitting again licking my wounds, going, oh God, another project that the offer fell on my desk, and the guys at Paramount Plus said, look, we know that you were just developing The Saint, and that's gone on ice, and that's sort of stopped for the time being. Would you consider this? We go very soon, but we think it'd be right up your street. It's period, it's movie world, there's a lot of things that I'd already kind of had a hand in, with period, with Eddie the Eagle and Rocketman and so on. And they said, we'd love you to consider it. And it was almost like in comparison to where I've been, developing, it was good to go. They were making it. They had 8 scripts, and I loved it. But I kind of, as soon as I read it, because as soon as someone says, "Oh, it's about the Godfather," you just, anyone, I defy anyone for it to not to be in their top 10 films, or you don't meet many people who go, "Oh, I don't like the Godfather." It's kind of overrated,
It has its moments. I'll give it that.
As it's it's quite good. Who made it? Coppola. You don't meet many people, and I'm one of those. I love it, and so I was like, wow, it's about the Godfather, and I started reading it. It's about Al Ruddy, who I didn't know, and he was this kind of outsider, maverick guy who's still alive at 92, who produced it and has his, he's the sole name on the Academy Award for Best Picture when it won in 72.
Yeah.
And his story's kind of amazing and unheard, and then there's all the links to the real life mafia, Joe Colombo, that you suddenly start unearthing, and he's involved in just trying to get this film made, and it's all set at Paramount, and there was just all these things that were really exciting and amazing about it. And they were like, come and set it up, come be a part of it, cast it, do the first 2 episodes, do the last 2, or do whatever you want. If it was an embarrassment of riches. So I really got engaged with that, and as quickly as I could get myself vaccinated and cleared, I came over to America to work. I said yes very quickly, because the scripts are just brilliant. Nicky Toscano and Michael Tolkin.
Yeah, well, I remember watching The Player when I was in my teens and not getting half of the jokes then. I mean, I get an awful lot more of them now. But what state, because you've hinted it was quite advanced when it came to you, what state, what was it in? You said there were 8 scripts, but were you able to go in and put your own fingerprints on those scripts? Or was it, I'm loath to say a job for hire or something like that, but where had it been cast?
I don't mind saying that. No, it hadn't been cast. Definitely not. And the scripts were in pretty good shape. I mean, they weren't messing around. They got Michael Tolkin and Nicky.
Well, quite, yeah.
Just kind of, as I say, they're it's not like they sort of stumbled into it by luck. They knew what they were doing, and no, they were in good shape. It was really about the look and the feel and the tone and the casting, and kind of like what it was really about, and what did we want to say with it, and all those bigger questions now that once you have the material, you have to start asking and answering, and how do you find those answers, which is a great period, and having come in the back off something that I've been sort of lovingly and laboriously developing over a long period of time, with lots of drafts going backwards and forwards and notes and drafts, and I was kind of like, wow, this is good to go. I don't need to really question much on this, and I was so keen to get back behind the camera again, so keen to get directing, because it'd been a couple of years since Rocketman, and I hadn't done anything. I've been developing, so it was a sort of gift horse in the mouth, that situation, really, with that. So I really had all the glorious, the fun stuff to do, and work out how you make certain things work. And there's a lot of stuff that I bring, of course, my flavour and not my vision too. That's what they've asked me to turn up and do. They don't want me to, they want the guy who directed Rocketman. They don't want the guy who's just going to turn up and go, well, put the camera over there and let these two actors talk, and I didn't want to do that. I was very keen and clear to them that it had to be cinematic. I mean, it had to have scale. It had to, in some way, not emulate the film, but at least it had to be a love letter to that period. It had to be a love letter to those filmmakers. It had to be a thank you in its way. I'm good with it, just celebrating those people. Same as Eddie the Eagle did, celebrates Eddie. Eddie the Eagle. It celebrates him. It doesn't sort of cast a cynical eye over him. It doesn't. So in that respect, it was very yeah.
I remember putting on a screening of Eddie the Eagle that you were kind enough to come along to and give us a talk to afterwards. And you talked there about casting Christopher Walken in that movie, about how you had a character in the film who wasn't on screen much, and you knew if you cast an actor with certain gravitas, it was going to do so much work in the audience's mind. I wonder, when you're casting something like The Offer, have you sort of got that in reverse, that the character names already are bringing that degree of gravitas? And I wonder how that affects you casting those roles.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do have that in reverse, because you're looking, right, if you just
Sinatra,
start from the outside, you're looking for Sinatra, you're looking for Francis Ford Coppola, you're looking for Mario Puzo, you're looking for you're James Caan, the list is endless. Brando and Pacino, you got to find someone to play Pacino, and so then it's more decisions about, okay, who were they at this point in their lives, and what was their role within this big story that we're telling? What kind of impact? How much of a player are they in this story? I mean, the good thing about it is our central figure, Miles Teller, who plays Al Ruddy, is unknown relatively, not in Hollywood, but outside of that, and so that was good, because it meant that Teller, of course, could step up into that, and they had a 10 character. And same with Juno Temple's character, Betty McCart, his secretary, as they were called back in the 70s, who was so much more than that. She was absolutely his right hand, and the show deals with that brilliantly. But these are really, and then the more sort of famous people, if you like, are more satellites of that central core story. But they're obviously they're key figures. But same with Bob Evans, larger than life character, but a really close relationship with Ruddy. So, but that was very exciting, because it did mean that the show was going no matter what. It's not like, I had to go, okay, who's the big castings coup that I can get that's going to make the studio be like, oh, great. I mean, obviously they like it when you get names. My old friend Colin Hanks was perfect for this role, who's a fictional character, but I was like, Colin, do you want to come and do it? And the studio were like, oh, that'd be amazing. I'd say, yeah, great. But Colin's an old friend from Band of Brothers, and he was like, fuck, yeah, I'd love to do it. And so that was... There's a few Band of Brothers guys in it. In fact, the guy who plays Frank Sinatra is one of the guys.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. So that was fun, because there was obviously there's a much bigger cast I've ever dealt with as well. I mean, there's in a TV show like that, there's a huge, and I had the first episode to sort of establish all these people, and I really relished that and enjoyed that, and I think that the first two episodes certainly, hopefully, reflect that, because it's really sort of bedding it in, and then the next day really take you on the journey there. And they're all fantastic. Giovanni Ribisi playing a mafia boss is just priceless. It's got to be seen to be believed. He's and his commitment. I mean, the man came in and been eating peanut butter for I don't know, like 40 days straight, and was put on, I don't know how much weight he'd put on, 2 stone or something. He was enormous, and he shaved his head so he looked like the guy he was playing. And
don't knock it.
No. It was extraordinarily charismatic, and but the level of commitment from actors like him and Miles as well, who's undoubtedly one of the hottest actors around at the moment. Top Gun and Spider Head or whatever it is, and he's just Miles. And he was like, we got to tell this story, man. This guy's amazing. He phoned Al Ruddy when I was first speaking to him about it, and he was like, I don't know, I haven't done TV, and it was a big thing for him, 6 months, and he's got Top Gun coming out, and there's big career decisions he's got to make, and he phoned Al Ruddy, and Al Ruddy just, I don't know what he said to him, but he hung up the phone an hour and a half later and called me and went, I'm doing it, there's no way anyone else, this is mine. And I was great, okay, Miles. You don't have to tell me twice. So it was full of great moments like that, and the guy who played Puzo, is a lovely actor, Patrick Gallo, and the studio. Are you sure? And there's always this back and forward about certain people. And I was absolutely adamant about Patrick, and it's just wonderful because he's a theatre actor from New York, and he kind of is doing his thing, and this was such a big deal for him, and I really wanted it for him because I knew he'd be amazing, and he is. He's so warm and likable, and to have him as the root of the Godfather, which is a very family orientated story, really.
Yeah,
I could talk about it for all of them for hours. Well, they're all amazing.
Because I remember when Oliver Stone was casting Nixon. And he was trying to find the actor for that. And he went down the line of people who looked like Nixon and instead went with someone who didn't, but who he felt captured it. And I mean, that sounds to me like that's your North Star with casting as well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, look, no one looks like Frank Sinatra, but Frank Sinatra. This is the thing. You can get someone who vaguely looks like them or but that for me is no basis for casting. It can't be. The basis has got to be like, are they a good actor? I mean, most actors are good. Don't get me wrong, but are they the right person for the part? And looks have really got to be a secondary consideration. Yeah, I mean, if like Anthony Ippolito, who plays young Pacino, looks remarkably like Al's, that was just good fortune because his audition was just compelling, and that's really what it came down to. It's like the performance they gave and how they inhabited those characters and how they they portrayed them, and we're not hampered by, or we don't. I said it right from the outset. It's like we can't get a whole bunch of lookalikes. We're not looking for impressions. Matthew Good does not really look like Bob Evans. We do everything we can to help him look like Bob Evans, but his eyes are a different color, and if you really want to get into it, we could jam contact lenses in his head all day long, but what good is that? It's not about contact lenses, it's about how he inhabits that character. And sure, he's got a lot of the mannerisms and the vocal register and rhythms that Bob Evans had, but he takes that character through an incredible journey emotionally and mentally and spiritually and physically, and it goes over 10 episodes, and he's got to be able to do more than a passable impression. He needs to create a character and give a braver performance, which is what he's done. I mean, it's incredible in that respect, and he's the one who's got him and Dan Fogler playing Coppola. They're two, and Mario Puzo, I suppose, the three that really are in it from the beginning to the end. They go on the whole journey, and to have just a slight impression of someone who looks like them is just never going to cut it. We had to. I was very clear and adamant about that. And then, it's not like I was the lone voice. We all were on the same page that it's the best person for the job who's going to, and in our world, they are who we say they are. They're Frank Sinatra. They are Coppola, they are Puzo, they are James Caan, they are Pacino, they are Brando.
So you told me when you went to make Rocketman, because I don't think it's a secret, you were sorting Bohemian Rhapsody out and then went fairly fast from Bohemian Rhapsody to Rocketman. And you had effectively, I think you told me about 8 weeks to build the film. That was the space you had to put at least the musical side of the film together. So what was the time scale here? What was it? A comparable amount of prep? But the fact that TV tends to move quicker, a factor?
It does. no, that was a huge learning curve for me. I mean, although I'd been in TV as an actor, you know, what you understand as an actor to when you turn up on the first day, so everything that's gone behind it is relatively little. No, it moves at a real rate of knots when I just had to, you know, again, but that, I suppose that experience with Bohemian where I literally had no prep and I after, you know, just turning up and doing it, was one thing that probably put me in good stead. And the relatively quick prep for Rocketman as well, and Eddie. You know, neither of those films had long prep. I just done another film when I had 12 weeks. It seemed like an absolute luxury, but it wasn't. Yeah, you know, there's a lot to do and a lot of people. You know, and you get the best team around you, people that you can rely on, that you know or are new to you and you find, and you just, you know, you're full steam ahead really. And you know, look, it's the classic things like you never finish, you just run out of time. Which is something that I've just sort of come to live by now, because it applies to pretty much everything you do, including life. You know, you never finish, you know, and that's the way you want to live. You want to live like I've always got something to do. Just like that's the way I approach it anyway. But prep is, you know, equally as valuable as the actual shooting and the edit. You know, and you get to. They say you get to make it 3 times. You make it once in prep, you make it once when you shoot it, and then you make it again when you edit. And that as long as those 3 sort of tie together somewhere, hopefully you end up with something coherent.
I mean, I've watched the first few episodes of it. I think you can comfortably say it's coherent, given the amount that you're juggling in those first couple of episodes, as you imply there. That was my question about prep on it, really, because the density in particular. Because there's an old theory. I spoke to a couple of people who jumped from film to directing television. They always say direct the first episode. Don't direct the 5th or 6th episode, because otherwise you're inheriting someone else's style. Was that a thing for you? Does that still hold water in your eyes? Because you must have worked with the other directors on this show as well.
I did, but look, they pick up hopefully where I left off, and they bring their individual style to it as well. But no, I've been fortunate enough to make a lot of the key decisions. I've the production designer, I've developed the costumes, and I've chosen the costume designer, and the look and the feel and the rhythm and the pace of things, and obviously each script endeavours to be its own modular little story that you could, in theory, I suppose, watch and either direction you could go back or forward on. But no, that's part of the great skill of these great TV directors, is that they come in and they look at what their predecessors done and gone, okay, and then what do I do? And then how do I not throw that out, but also bring my own? I mean, I suppose in a way, Bohemian Rhapsody, I had an element of that, because I came and I looked at what the guy before me had done and what they were doing and what tonally was happening there and creatively, and I didn't want to throw that out. Then 2/3 of the film had been made. Nearly over half the film had been made, so I couldn't throw that out, and I wanted to keep that film being consistent. I didn't want to go, oh, well, that's his bit and that's a Dexter bit. Hopefully that film is a whole, and you just enjoy. You don't sit and and I suppose that you could say that's akin to coming and doing other episodes of something like The Offer. Good TV, and you've got the consistency of the cast and the crew, and the costume and the design and everything that goes into it. So I suppose it's them having their take and their vision on those episodes, because everything still needs to be interpreted.
I mean,
and these guys are brilliant. They're brilliant. Colin Banks.
Well, quite, I mean, the list of other directors on it is an impressive list as well. And I do want to acknowledge that. Just to pick, I'm not going clickbaity. I appreciate this might sound like I am, but appreciating what you just said about Bohemian there, and appreciating Rami Malek has been as vocal about your predecessor on that film as I think anyone needs to be. I'm not trying to put you down there, but I just wonder. I mean, the story of that was, it was a little bit of a state when you got to that. But what you're saying there just makes it sound like actually it was just a case of fixing a few puzzles. I only bring that up just because you brought that up there.
Well, I mean,
I'm not trying to stir the pot, and
No, I appreciate that. No, look, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you know, I mean, there's other things that I could talk about. I'm talking about one aspect of it. I'm not talking about it as an entirety.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, oh, it was all just a matter of turn up and recruit and carry on this wonderful work that have been doing. No, there was obviously that plugging into that is not straightforward. It doesn't come without issues, and that you also have to navigate. I'm just talking about, I suppose, consistency.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I mean? And keeping that. You know, what good would it serve, you know, Adam Arkin if he just came and on the next lot of episodes wanted to do something completely different from what was established, because he wanted to make a statement like, hey, I'm Adam and I've got a you know, what do you do? Sack all the production designers and all the costume department, start again, and everyone's suddenly wearing pink, or, you know, it's not what it's there to do. But at the same time, I could have left it in complete disarray as well. Oh my God, these people don't know what they're coming or going. Yeah. And no, I mean, look, and I'm being circumspect about Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm talking about it in a very narrow aspect of
what
it was for me. What I, you know, one aspect of what it was for me, the more kind of positive or comparative aspect of it to directing a TV show.
Well, the other part of TV shows, when people make the jump from film to TV, that I don't hear talked about an awful lot, is what happens when you then get into the edit room. Because, I mean, going back to that first episode, the fact that you've said that makes me think this is going to get quite interesting. So the fact that you're juggling so many characters there and so many thread lines and then trying to get it into an hour and 4 minutes, I think that first episode is. Can you, how did you find that editing process differ from something like Wild Bill, you know, independent film where the money presumably was hardly raining down on you?
No. I mean, the pressures are similar in that respect because there's delivery dates.
Yeah,
Bill was only free of a delivery date because we hadn't sold it anywhere and there was no studio, and so it was independent, and that had the luxury of them go, right, go edit. You know, it's not like, you know, now I'm in the DGA and I get 10 weeks unmolested by the studio producers to create my director's cut. That's by law sort of thing. So that gives me a cushion to get that done. Bill, it's irrelevant because there was no studio to breathing down our neck, and I just edited until I thought it was ready, which was lovely. You know, obviously at a certain point I went, come on, give it to us. But that was a completely unique experience of that. Unique experience of that. I mean, for why I said, oh God, when you mentioned it here, because TV, I had 5 days, I think, to edit per episode. So whereas I'm used to now with film, you get your 10 weeks. So, you know, Rocketman, I had 10 weeks left alone. Go make the film you want to make. And if I choose to show it to someone, then that's my choice. I'm in total control of that. But I can go for 10 weeks. It's not ready. You can't have it. And that's it. And that's great because you're making a 2-hour movie and you've got 10 weeks to do it. But like I say, The Offer, it's like, no, you get 5 days. And now it's assembled as you go along. Obviously, the editor's there and he's working, and you can go in the evenings after work and look at scenes and work on them and try this. And there was a take here and there was that there. And I know this moment's not working. Blah, blah, blah. But then once it's all done and finished and shot, they go, right, next week, that's your week to edit, and then we want to start looking at it. Then we've got to have a studio screening, you know, and then the showrunners are going to come in, and it moves very quickly. But I kind of like that. I mean, you know, the show was well written. It was in good shape when we got there. In terms of the scenes were playing well, the acting was great, and I don't shoot loads and loads of takes. If I think I've got it, I'm good to go, and I want to spoil myself with options. I know when I've got it. And I say it was moving along as we were working. So I had a whole episode at those 5 days. It wasn't like I was still waiting for stuff, and visual effects were coming in and getting done. There's all sorts of turnovers and stuff like that, technical stuff that has to happen. And I say it's 5 days. It's 5 days for the director's cut, and then it's about another month as it works its way through the system getting done. But these people are super used to it and highly professional, and I was just the one who had to go, oh my God, this is, and I would spend, from 8 in the morning till 8 at night there every day working on it, and got it to a place where I was like, okay, I think this is working, and show a couple of friends, and they'd be like, oh, that's fun. That's so great. Well, what's this about? I don't understand that. Who's that? Why are they there? The questions that you need to be asked. But yeah, in comparison, it's like you blink and you're handing it over. It's like, that's what's so shocking about the TV world.
I think it was Sunshine on Leith where you said before that you shot that, and then you identified in post-production that there was a chance of a bigger ending. I think the financier or something said go back and do a bit. I mean, presumably you have no such options on this in this timescale. If you wanted to change something radical, you were out of luck. I'm not suggesting you did want to change anything.
No. I suppose I mean, look, I think they're pragmatic. They're aware of what they think is working and what's not. I mean, I suppose if it was a situation where it was like, oh, there is no ending, we didn't shoot an ending, then you are in the midst of production. There was situations where I was like, I need another scene. I need one bit here that I don't have to help tie up this moment. And I went down onto I came out of the edit and I went down back onto the set. And I had it prearranged, obviously, but I picked up a couple of scenes with some people at the end of the day when they were shooting. I kind of wedged myself in there and went, I really need this. They were down at a location. I needed an exterior, and I got something there with Colin Hanks. And there was a couple of bits and pieces like that where you look at it and you go, it's not clear. But that's the beauty, because the production's still running. It's still got another 8 episodes to make. I made the first 2. I was very lucky. So it's another 5 months of them filming. I could have, in theory, run down there at any time and filled that gap. But But this is the thing about these very experienced guys in TV who've written episode after episode. They don't move on to 8 episodes, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Without having a really good solid foundation for 1, 2, and 3. You get a very strong, well constructed and delivered shooting script, and like I say, so that's part of the appeal for me, that I could literally hit the ground running and like, this is good to go. I don't, we sit, obviously we had meetings about it and we talked about stuff, and I talked to Tolkien about a speech here for Ruddy and a moment there for Juno and, Betty and various things like that. And those things bubble to the surface, but structurally it was really sound.
I've always got a sense that you're a bit of a 70s movie nerd. And there's also the old cliche that that sometimes you're watching something and you realize there are so many stories, you could follow any of these and it would be interesting. And I read the kid stays in the picture. What about 15, 20 when that came out, and I'm just like trying to wrap my head around containing quite so much. Because Evans's story alone could be 10 episodes, couldn't it? In fact, it was a film. I think that there was a documentary.
Yeah, there is. It's a very good film. It's very good.
And so I'm just interested, just going back, because you mentioned Michael Tolkien a couple of times. I do just want to acknowledge the writer on it.
Yeah,
I just want to get kind of your reaction to those scripts and you working with him, and if he explained all the gags in the player that like had flown over your head at the time.
we didn't chat much about the player. Because we were working on the offer.
No stars, just talent. That was the player, wasn't it?
Yeah. Stars, just talent. That's right. Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts.
Yeah. Not to say they're not talent, they are. Look, I mean, he's been around. He's actually in the player as well. Him and his brother, who they're in it, which is great fun. Look, I mean, he is part of that tradition that goes back to that far, and obviously has that great touchstone even in the player when he talks about Juno Temple's dad, Julian Temple, in the beginning of Absolute Beginners, which is an incredible shot, like the player has this incredible opening one continuous shot.
8 minutes, isn't it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and they talk about Julian Temple in the beginning of it, so Juno was extremely excited to meet Michael. But look, yeah, I mean, he was busy with other episodes and other stuff that he was doing and working on with Nicky Toscano, the showrunner.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, it wasn't like we sat around and had a lot of time to discuss previous work, and we talked a lot about the stuff that was doing in hand, and his work's like apparent in that, and he spent the lion's share with Ruddy in the beginning, just talking to him. There is no official memoir, as far as I know, of Albert Ruddy, who the story kind of follows, and that's really based on Tolkien and Ruddy sitting down and just chewing the fat, as they like to say, about their Hollywood experience. And Ruddy goes back even further. So I think that Tolkien, I mean, talked to him that really he found Ruddy as compelling as anybody, being the old maverick that he is.
Yeah.
And the stories that he had, that he tells about how after The Godfather, they wanted to do Godfather 2 and he didn't want to do it. He wanted to go and make The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, yep.
Which is if you look at it as a film and what it is and what it cost to make and how much it made, it's a runaway success, as well. And same as with the Cannonball movies that he made as well.
Yeah.
Cannonball Run and all that. And so I think Tolkien was really enamored and captivated by Ruddy and his persona and his story, and then sort of getting into that and that relationship with Joe Colombo, who was one of the heads of the Five Families and was assassinated around this. But it's all in the show, it's all fairly factual. Obviously, we tell it in a slightly heightened way, because to fit in the full relationship and story in sequential order is a tall order. So we play fast and loose with certain aspects of the timeline. But factually, it did all happen and happened this way. And Ruddy to this day says, Colombo was one of the most on-straight shooters that he'd ever met, and the compared to some people in Hollywood of that period, and even now possibly, he'd trust Joe Colombo more than any of them. So there's that really interesting dynamic relationship that Michael's digging into, and that I found really interesting as well, at the centre of that.
It's a hell of a way into the story, isn't it? It's
and then Tolkien's created three very sort of distinct worlds, and Hollywood is one aspect of it, and Ruddy, and then the world of New York and high finance and business with Charlie Bluedorn, who's another fascinating character, brilliantly played by Bern Gorman. And then the world of the underworld of the mafia, and then suddenly going, who's writing this book about us, and we don't like it, and Frank Sinatra saying, I want that book squashed. Everyone knows that character's meant to be me, so it's a spider's web of really intriguing and amazing characters, and then Tolkien's the one who threaded it all together.
Well, my
along with Nicky Toscano.
My time's pretty much. Well, I was going to say my time's pretty much up, because you've got another film to go and make shortly. I think you were just saying just before that they open the editing room in about 10 minutes for you. But so can you tell us what's on the stove now? Because you're in post production on Ghosted, I think, which Ghosted, is Anna Darmus and Chris Evans, and do you have other things on the stove ready to go?
I don't know about ready to go. There's things floating around that I'm eyeing, but I'm so immersed in Ghosted. Like I say, I've got 10 weeks to create the film now, that hopefully the studio and producers adore, and that's obviously my priority. And there's things that I'm reading, but I'm not free to do anything until next year anyway. And I tend to kind of focus on what's in hand, and then think, okay, after this maybe I need a little break. But I don't know. I'm confident something will come along that I'll really get excited about. But I'm not going to say what that is at present.
Well, I'll put a phone call into Eon. Surely you're the Bond director in waiting. So, once we're done,
from your ears to from your lips to Barbara Broccoli's ears, I could only hope.
Yeah, she's coming around for tea in a minute. Yeah,
is she?
She's coming to babysit the kids. She's great.
Oh, great. Well, don't slip it in. Don't make a big deal of it. But
you just leave that to me.
If you just really subtly go, oh, have you thought about? I don't want to twist your arm. I don't want to. But yeah, that would be fun.
Dexter Fletcher, it is always a delight to speak to you, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on the offer. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks ever so much.
And that was my conversation with Dexter Fletcher for The Offer, which is streaming on Paramount Plus now. Just one or two extra little notes on the end of that. The Sherlock 3 that we talked about in that is Sherlock Holmes 3, to which Dexter Fletcher was attached for some time. Still seems to be interested in making, with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. And then I mentioned a book in the midst of that conversation as well that I hadn't put in my preamble at the start. That book is The Kid Stays in the Picture, the autobiography of the late producer Robert Evans. Quite a piece of work that is, and it has been turned into a documentary film as well. But I think that's just about it. If you're not completely bored of my rambling, you can find more from me on Twitter at Simon Brew. You can find more from the entire Film Stories project at Film Stories Pod. Our website is filmstories.co.uk. The full archive of podcasts is up there, as well as every weekday we update that with news, reviews, movie features, all sorts of things going on there. If you go to store.filmstories.co.uk, that's where you can find all of our print magazines and our sneakers Blu-ray as well. We're at facebook.com/filmstories online and youtube.com/film stories. Nearly lost it there. And if you want to support this podcast, you can find more details on that at patreon.com/Simon Brew. As always, thank you for listening and thank you for your time. I'm now going to get to work on your regular episode of Film Stories. Until then, you all look after yourselves. Thank you. Bye-bye.